Hello. Can you hear me? Oh, you're muted.
Jawohl, I can hear you, yes.
I am walking the dog right now.
Cool.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Real good. I did a little bit of Tai Chi this morning, so feeling less guilty than I normally do.
Yay.
Yeah.
I gotta start doing something like that.
Hey, we could do it online if you like.
Really?
Yeah. We can go through the exercises, go through some basic postures, talk about balance, talk about relaxation, talk about
Perfect.
breathing,
Sounds up my alley.
about circles.
Ooh,
Actually, you dance, so you're probably a natural. You're probably well balanced. You probably move in circles, you know.
yes, I do. How's the weather over there? I saw haze and
I posted a
darkness.
picture out my backyard just about half an hour ago, and it's just hazy and white, and some people would call it dreary,
Stop
you
it.
know.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just hoping that the weather people are correct that this will go away by tomorrow. I
Hmm.
don't know. Hey, computer, air quality.
Welcome to the air quality skill. Asking what the air quality is in New York.
Come on. Computer, air quality in Stanwood, Washington.
Sorry, I'm having trouble accessing.
I don't know. Alexa's pretty confused sometimes.
Yeah. Alexa's not sophisticated.
Nope, nope, nope. Say what you
Um,
want about AI, but it's still very, very A. And I know because I'm in the business actually. So
yeah.
you don't have to get
Yes.
too private, but how about 5 or 6 words on your date yesterday?
I don't care. He was cool. He talked my ear off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did he ask any questions of you?
Yeah, he did, but he talked mostly about himself, which is fine.
Okay.
I actually prefer that. Please talk about yourself because I don't want to tell you
Computer,
about me.
cancel. He probably wants to make sure he qualifies.
Yeah. Yeah. It paid for everything, which is really sweet.
Hmm.
Um, it's really weird. Normally, men don't do that these days. You pay for half. So I made sure I budgeted just in case.
That's fascinating. I'm from an age where if I ask somebody out, I always pay. So
Yeah.
I am uh, interested how that works. If we say, I'm going to ask you out, but can you bring 50%?
Ow.
That's kind of a weird thing to say. Or if not, you wait
Well,
to the very end and then say, okay, well, my half is. Anyway,
I do. This wolf dog starts getting crazy, but I do. Um, I kind of understand, and I make it work to my favor because um, when I used to go out, guys would try to pay, and it would mean that
oh, I get it.
I
Then
owe
there's the flip
them
side.
my
God
time.
damn it.
Yeah.
Come on.
And then, so I use it also. Like if I don't like them, I'll pay for half. I'll insist to pay for half. So they can't say I owe them another date. And I don't feel guilty. I'm like, okay, here's my half and we'll call it even. We don't like each other. So there's that
Okay, let me
side.
ask you this. How often have you actually gotten up before the dinner was done and left?
Just once.
Ah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Glad to know you got it in you.
Oh yeah, dude. I wasn't making a scene, but my words were pretty strong
Yeah.
and people kind of looked. And the guy was nice enough to realize that he was insulting me on purpose. And so he remained quiet and he paid for it. At that point where I'm like, yeah, you're going to pay for this because I'm walking out.
Uh-huh.
So I'm a nice person, Sam.
No, I
But
know you are. I know you are.
but I do stand my ground. And it's usually, I find that it's more effective when it's not natural.
So I actually forget this week. Did we? I mean, it seemed like Alexander offered to join us very early on in the week.
Yeah.
So with Alexander joining us and introductions and him meeting you, I didn't think we were probably going to get too deep into any given topic or video segment. But to me, I think that's fine. Alexander, by the way, is a very, very good close friend of mine. I think I might have mentioned I had daily conversations with him probably for 2, 3, maybe 4 years, and then more periodic, since then. But yeah, for a while, the first 2, 3 years I knew him, it was very intense. It was almost every day. I mean, literally almost every day, like 7 days a week.
Wow.
For about an hour. Yeah.
And he's got a beard too.
He's got a beard. Graham's got a beard. I got a beard. I guess you'll soon grow a beard, Kayla.
I did I did see you guys do that before. When it was just
did?
one-on-one with you and William. I can't call him Graham because I had a Graham, my Polynesian grandma. And we all called her Graham.
Okay.
And she just passed away, so it's really hard for me to call her Graham. Speaking
Graham,
of,
speaking about you. How goes? Hey, you're
So
both
Kayla's out.
Uh-oh. Did he freeze for you? He froze for me.
yes, he froze. I see light behind him.
Yes. The halo effect.
Un aspecto.
Graham, you're in an area which I guess may not have great internet connectivity. Your video is choppy coming through.
Is it better now?
At least it's actually coming through. You were frozen there for about 15, 20 seconds there. Or maybe
Okay.
felt like that. So.
I'm now sitting still. This is my scene. This is the main square, a classic Spanish scene.
Is that called a plaza?
So, yeah, that's a plaza. Yeah, the plaza, and if you're sitting down having a coffee or a drink, no mask is fine. But if you're moving, you have to put it on.
Yeah, makes sense.
Gracias. The classic. Classic. And Kayla's hitchhiking in Arizona or something, are you?
Yeah, no. This is the farm fields in Somis. This is right out of my house. See if I can this. So if you hear me breathing hard, that's why.
You're right underneath some EMF.
I am?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
up.
that's right. Yeah, you're right. Oh well. So this is, yeah, over in that area, that's my house is over there. And then this is, yeah, I'm gonna have to mute you guys if he starts getting crazy again.
No problem.
Cool.
What's the puppy's name?
This is Rocky.
Rocky. And we have our
Alexander.
esteemed Dr. Laszlo. Alexander, greetings to you. Hey, I was telling Kayla, in a few weeks, she's going to grow a beard.
Yeah. I need something to pull on my chin.
You can buy. I'm sure you can buy one off the internet now. I'm sure there's no
Yeah.
problem.
Just stop shaving for a few days,
I'm actually blessed. I don't have to shave. Not my face.
Do you remember the Life of Brian? Remember, right? In the Life of Brian,
yeah.
Monty Python, we could go to the marketplace and all the women would get the beards. It was very cool.
He's a very naughty boy. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
So, Alexander, I really, really am happy you opted in to try and join us. One of the things that we set up here is this is a 30-minute conversation, because normally on Sundays at the top of the hour, I have the GCC unblocking, which I host. But I really, really like the fact that this, at least organically and slowly, seems to be growing. Graham, I hope that's okay with you. And Kayla, I hope so too. However, I'm really thinking that if this really takes off and it's really, like keeps your attention and curiosity out, I'd like to find a longer time to do this. And I may end up letting someone else host unblocking, just to give you a sense of my excitement about this. So I'm hoping this goes well. What I was hoping is, Alexandra, Kayla hasn't met you, and I don't know how much you and Graham have spoken. I've gone on and on with Kayla about how you and I used to speak every day. I don't know if I've actually gone that long with Graham to tell him how much we used to speak. So I was thinking, Graham, Kayla, would you guys like to tell us what your favorite color is, and then let's go from there? No, I'm just kidding.
Graham can go
So
first.
Graham can go first.
Yes, please.
Well, I have spoken with Laz the man,
It's the Laz, come on.
Alex and there. I like that, Alex and there. I think twice we've spoken twice, but it's like one of these things. It's like in this, I'm hesitant to call it a movement, but there's clearly a movement of the mycelium, so that we all know each other. Everyone knows everybody else. You look at your LinkedIn, you go, oh, I know him. So we all know each other, and we're all, working for a better world in whatever story one has. So yeah, right now I'm in San Cugat with this beautiful. My son lives, maybe the boy you saw. The film was recorded other side of that, and I think that. Yeah, the study of collaboration and where that could lead if we connect and more people join, it's emerging and creating very useful content that people could learn from. I think educational content for me, and education arising out of conversation or arising from interacting with people live. I'm really learning more and more. The more I'm in community, the more I'm sharing, the more I'm listening, the more I learn, rather than reading from a book, which is fine. It's one way. But I love this way of learning and sharing and exploring. So, favorite color is dark blue. This is black, but dark blue.
Okay.
Kayla, over to you.
Yes. I wanted you to go first because there's cars passing by. I am here in Southern California, the northern part of Southern California, if you can imagine that, about an hour and a half north of LA. Thankfully, we haven't been affected by the fires. I live in a small community called Somis, and it's funny because we call this place the little country place. So not too diverse. I'm like probably the only islander here. Single mom, 2 boys, ages 12 and 9. And I'm also a cultural dance teacher, and I have found a job, yay, working part-time, ironically for a matchmaker. So I found this group through a friend of mine called, or actually not this group, the Global Challenges Collaboration I found through Joshua Bridge. Are you familiar with Joshua?
I first talked to Joshua when I was in Greece. I remember having a very long conversation with Joshua that was 2-3 years ago. Yeah.
You were in Greece, or he was in Greece?
I was in Greece, and we talked many, many times. Yeah.
Okay. So during the pandemic, I had the ability to just stay at home and explore things that I've always been interested in. So I was interested in the one-on-ones between William and Sam. I just find a more intimate setting sometimes to be more helpful, small groups. But anyways, I definitely welcome the idea of more people. So yes. I'm done.
Sam, it's your turn.
I have to take a turn. Y'all know me.
You do.
Okay. I'm a single father. No, I'm just kidding. I like taking walks on the beach. Okay. Alexander knows that he and I met in 2013, I believe. He was driving up the coast of California, and through a reference from a friend of mine, I believe it was Dino Karabeg, who's at the University of Oslo, he said, "You got to meet this guy." I cold called Alexander, and he was open and warm-hearted and curious enough to actually stop and have what I think a dinner with me, just
At Denny's.
out of that, based on a cold call. And that was a wonderful trait or attribute of Alexander's character. And so I had a wonderful dinner, and we ended up talking. We called ourselves the Amigos. And initially it was Dino Karabeg and David Price in London and myself. And then we expanded to Alexander and Frode Hegland. Alexander, of course, you guys know, is in Buenos Aires, and Frode is in London. So we talked intently for quite a while. And one of the key topics was a thing we called the community of impact, which I really have been trying to disseminate. But that group of three kind of created the core, and then Frode and Alexander really have been helping kind of shape some of the associated ideas and the key ideas within it. I did that because, okay, so one more minute on this and then I'll stop, is because I have been trying to embrace and extend Doug Engelbart's ideas around how we collectively become more intelligent. And too many people focus on the technology. Doug correctly, I think, identified the human system side as that which would block us in being able to do so. So though I'm a technologist in my day gig, I've been focusing on the human side. So I define the scalable, successful collaboration, the theory, the practices, the tools, the culture. I define that as collaborology. And so from that base, I thought, what are the key practices that we as individuals could bring to sort of seed this kind of collective intelligence scalability? And that's the one pager that is captured in the COI document, the Community of Impact document. So that's my primary focus. Now, when I started this thing with Graham got interested because part of this collaborology effort led to a list that I compiled, probably now numbering above 20, of things I call smart people problems. So Graham got interested and wanted to write a book on that. And I said, well, there's a lot to learn about this. And we proposed and agreed to study, because there are hundreds of thousands of hours of video of people trying to collaborate now on the web. We said, let's just take little snippets and let's see what happened there. And let's see what worked. Let's see, what didn't work. And let's try and see what we can learn from that and map it to various things, among one of them being smart people problems. And so that was the exercise we did for a few weeks. And Kayla watched us do some of this. But I'm really just, bringing myself into the present here, really kind of saying, I'm very open to what this could be, because that's the genesis. Let's see what the four of us would like to do carrying this forth, if at all. I mean, I'm hoping that you stay interested, Alexander, but I'm not assuming that. So we'll see what happens out of this conversation, okay? So I've probably gone on way too long. It is now your turn.
Okay, well, it's great to be here. Gosh. Just to be, yeah? Well, listen, what I got from, I guess I'll go into order of the people who I've known and how I've known. And yes, Sam connected with that. And Kayla, I do hope to keep this also, intimate, very much focused on listening. I want to hear, I want to witness. And in general, for me, I know that I love the dynamic of these conversations that I've had with Sam in the past, and together with sometimes with Dino and sometimes with David Price as well, who where we have these conversations, and there is such a wonderful dynamic of conversation. The listening is so, I think it's respectful, but I think there's something more to it there. There's a kind of almost a sacredness about the engagement. It feels very, very much like we're witnessing each other and we're holding space for each other. And there are many conversations, many online conversations where it's just a series of interruptions. and even so, I imagine that sometimes in these conversations, at least in my experience in the past with Sam, has been not a sense of interruption, but a sense of continuation. Like, yeah, let me just mention here this, and then there's something respectfully is interjected, and it seems like a continuation of the flow. So somehow there's some qualitative difference in that, and I'm very interested in that. I'm interested in observing, good quality human interaction. So one of the things that I'm particularly interested in these days is humaning, as a verb. I've talked to Graham about this recently as well. And what does it mean to human well? And how can we learn how to human well? Taking off from Alan Watts talked about how the tree doesn't produce leaves. It leaves, right? And my cat goes in and out. But okay, both of them. I didn't know I had two cats now, but okay, fine. And you got Zeus, and I don't. What's the Zeus end?
This is Gaia. Zeus, unfortunately, is
gone, right? Yeah, that's
true.
true.
Now.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So this is Gaia, and you got two.
This is Gaia, and she's got a mom, Tia, and the mom's sister, Hera. And Gaia's got two brothers, Helios and Apollo. And they're all various places in the house right now.
I can imagine, all in different constellations.
Yes. But Gaia is the one that most closely bonds to me.
And has a lot of Zeusitude.
This is half Zeus, yes.
Uh-huh, got it. Yeah, I knew Zeus. Okay, so, but just to say that, yes, how do we human well? And humaning well for me is something that we learn a lot from Gaia and from all of other friends who are often not human. If the universe is humaning, how are we being that expression? So that's one of my inquiries these days. I have a daughter. Her name is Kayla. So, and Kayla, we have a name that came from Hawaiian, which, right, is light or chalice of light, if I understand. And she's in San Francisco. She's north now, living in, she's going to the University of San Francisco, but is now, during this weirdness times, is in Vallejo. And yeah, spent many years there. And let's see, other things that I'm just to as a point of connection and contact here. Collective intelligence is a big interest of mine as well. The communities of impact, we had a lot of work around that. What is, again, the flow for me from, in my understanding, for me, I mean, my understanding from connective intelligence, which is a precursor to collective intelligence, right? So connective intelligence leading to, or being a platform for, or scaffolding for collective intelligence, which is not the objective, just to sit around and be smart or intelligent, whatever. It's that is a precursor for collective creativity and collective wisdom. How do we harness that? And I'm really interested in this particular point in time. Just today, I was reading an incredibly excellent Twitter feed, which I then retweeted, but it's like interminable, about what's happening now and why is it happening, and could we have foreseen this, and how could we, what is the 2020 hindsight, right? Now we're in 2020, what is it? And how can we learn from this to be more collectively smart or less blindsided by this, this problematique, as the Club of Rome talks about it, this interconnected set of problems that define our current predicament. And right now, it certainly is a predicament, and they're all pretty intense and feeding on each other in, not life-affirming, future-creating ways. What can we learn from that? How can we be more collectively intelligent from that? And my work here in Buenos Aires, just to wrap it up, and I'm done. Sorry for droning on for so long. Has to do with well, it started with the stuff that I was working with Sam on and Dino and company a while back on evolution learning communities. What's, first of all, a community, which I define as 2 or more people, unless you're dealing with multiple personality, and that's not what the community we're talking about, right? So 2 or more people, right, with a shared identity, at least one shared identity, a common purpose, and a commitment to the joint creation of meaning. Meaning, nobody's imposing the meaning, but we commit to jointly create meaning, right? So that for me is the baseline definition of community. And then from that, how do we form a learning community, So one that we have something, what is it we want to talk about? There's something we're interested in learning. We're not a chess community or whatever, that's would be more of a club anyway, but we're not a neighborhood community. There's something that we're interested in particular. And then an evolutionary learning community doesn't just stay with learning one thing. It learns how to learn in harmony with the dynamics of its broader environment. That was my focus. And then since 92, actually, when I started writing on this, but in 2014, 16, I started looking at how can we get communities of evolution learning community, right? And what are the structures for that? Is it hierarchical? Is it rhizomic? The mycelial frame, which is, I think, much more powerful, looking at nodes in a rhizome. So how do we connect these in a mutually empowering way so you have communities of evolution learning community, which I call an evolutionary learning ecosystem. And that is what I'm working on here in Argentina. We already have a pilot project. We have 13 evolution learning communities connected in an evolution learning ecosystem. It's a funded project, although that's, I think, not going to last. People can't see the reason to fund this, so unfortunately it's not going to stay going. But it at least has proven a successful dynamic, and people engaged are really enjoying it. So that's an interesting sort of proof of concept, at least. That's me in a nutshell, which is definitely where I belong. You're mute, Sam.
So I'm riffing now on some of the things that you said. I'm curious specifically on this definition of community. I would say my understanding of GCC is we satisfy probably 2 of your 4 criteria. And those 2 are, we do believe we are 2 or more people within GCC. And I think we do share, those of us who show up, a commitment to shared meaning making or sense making. I'm not sure yet that we satisfy the other 2 criteria, the shared identity, which I don't think we have, or the shared purpose, which I don't think we have either. And just to complete that thought, the way I describe GCC for those who come close to or enter is that I think of it as the town square or the town plaza you go after dinner just to walk, dinner off and digest a little bit, okay? So we eat dinner, we do whatever we need to during the day, we fix food, then we go to the plaza and we see who we meet, and there's little clumps of people that gather and talk about various this and that. And some people may establish a habit and gather underneath this tree occasionally, and some people gather underneath that tree or around that park bench. But I think that's about as well as I can characterize GCC. So I was just kind of reacting to your definition of community there, just FYI. So I'm curious, what got you to say, wow, I'm in, let me see what's going on here?
It was the beards and the potential beard for Kayla.
Hey, a beard on Kayla would draw me anywhere, okay?
Yeah, I was talking with Graham about this, I think, recently, that, female dwarves have beards, right? So it's, that's naturally part of the female dwarves in Tolkien's mythology. Yeah.
I don't actually recall that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Beards. Yeah.
All right.
Graham, can you say something about the Agora and the Stoa, given that you are a resident Grecophile?
Well, it's interesting thing about the Greeks, they gather quite easily together. They're very good at that. They just hang out, and they're very, now not everybody, but from my experience, they very quickly get into meaningful subjects. For me, anyway, philosophy, psychology, history of. I mean, they go straight in. It's not as if, and that's anybody. Talk about economics, politics, whatever. Often other places, often wherever I've been in the world, people gather to complain or to support each other through something. There's no gathering for a purpose. Although in Catalonia, there's a word for something where you gather to have a conversation specifically about a subject. That is, culturally, there's a thing. But it's interesting you mentioned this about the different contexts with which you gather, for what purpose and why. So if people are here, like, look at this is a square. I happen to be in Turbo Capitalism Central. You know, this is possibly the most affluent town in this part of the world. And I've lived here on and off for many years. So finding people who gather who are interested in certain subjects like me was very difficult. So I was very isolated here. That's why I left. I don't know. That's part of my puzzle. But I think what's interesting, just to go to another essence, is that you start with 2, then 3 come in, and 4. I was just having this conversation with a guy who I'm staying in a flat with, that in the past, I know of a story where someone who was very wealthy brought together Nobel Prize winners, perceiving that if he brought together very smart people, they would come up with the answers to everything. It was chaos, egos, I'm right, your theory is wrong, total waste of time. And I know that, so I was told this story, and we were discussing the idea of, you start with like good ones, people who are self-aware, who are listening, who've developed some kind of capacity. And this is something to talk about. What is it that makes a good individual? Self-aware, you know, been through his or her own inner work battles, major life situations, gone through that, a lot of inner work. And that person then meets another one, and they get on, but they'll mirror each other, they'll sort of reflect each other. And a third comes in, observes, listens, and it shares. And then we get to the 4. So yeah, it's like, I would say in the new normal, or whatever's coming next, I like to call it a renaissance. Some call it golden age, some call it turning points. There's all sorts of names for it, but it's about learning new behaviors and learning. I think this is where the connection with last week is, moving from the I to the we. How do you educate ourselves to move from an I attention focus to a we? And a lot of, like in Spain here, again, I'm not saying everybody, but it's usually me, my family, extended family, that's it. The rest of the world doesn't exist. I don't know if that's the same in South America, Alexander, or other places, but I know that many places, particularly in Mediterranean societies, family comes first. Maybe God first, family second. But community, you know, so that for me is a different step, to then have concern for the politics of your area, the economics of your area, to care about everybody and not just yourself. That's me.
You know, it was curious that Alexander, the logo that I came up with and I'm still using from 2013 or 2014 is a 3-part yin yang symbol that we labeled I, we, world, those 3 parts. And so I do think that it's an interesting, call it a trifecta or whatever. I subsequently found out there's a version of it called the Triskelion that is used to essentially signal among people those in the BDSM kink or fetish. I don't know if you actually know this, but I discovered this after doing this 3-part yin yang symbol. I thought that was kind of humorous. One more little tidbit, and that is, Alexander, enough time has gone by, and I've gone into enough conversations with enough people that haven't had that conversation yet with me, that 2 weeks from yesterday, in other words, 2 Saturdays from now, I'm about to take a segment of the GCC Saturday barn raising session and review the COI again. If indeed you're available and would like to help, refine and, rephrase and re-express some of those ideas, because I'm finding that to me, they're still very meaningful, but the key part of it, the commitment part, the self-expressed commitment part, I find rare. And so I'm wondering whether that's too big a blocker or whether it's just enough filter to get the serious people involved and the non-serious people not. So I was curious about that little dynamic there.
I'd love to respond, but I think Kayla had something looked like you might wanted to share something at one point. Kayla, did you?
No, I was looking up what Graham was saying online, and I'm just listening.
Okay.
And oh, by the way, Alexander, since I mentioned that was 2 Saturdays from now, next Saturday, Kayla and Stacy are leading a Talanoa conversation around the topic of bullying.
Gosh, there's so many dimensions to that topic.
Exactly.
Personal, collective, racial,
Yeah.
political, goodness gracious, in relation to nature. There's so many dimensions of bullying.
I'm just aware, putting my finger
Time.
up, that in terms of complexity, now that there are 4 of us and our background's history and also the history between the 2 of you, there's so much more information in the field than there is before. I'm very, very sensitive to energetic information fields. So in the liminal spaces in between us, there's a lot going on from my sensitivity. So there's so many directions we could go in. And we have each of us, my suggestion is that each of us must have a part of a puzzle, or we can choose to believe we've got a part of something. We've gathered here now, and the exploration, what can come next? Because this 4 came out of a 2, which came out of the GCC, which was with Fleming, and there's Fleming going back to, it all goes back to New Civilization. And who knows, and your work, Alexander, over 30, 40 years, Kayla's World and Life, which I'm looking forward to getting to know more about her journey. How do we now, with all our skills and qualities and knowledge, allow whatever wants to be formed to emerge?
So one of the things that I recently and probably even grudgingly have come to as a conclusion is the absolute form of sense making as emergent cannot be left to itself. It's kind of contradictory. It's kind of almost paradoxical. In other words, the emergence of sense making still takes place in individual acts. That these little nuggets of sense pop up and get expressed by specific individuals. What I'm curious about is the emergence of it within a group as the dynamic. But I do think that the definite critical role of the individual in that process. So in so doing, that's a preface to me saying, I am offering to reconsider this thing that I proactively did this past week, which was, this used to be just called the Graham and Sam one-on-one, but then we added Kayla, so it was Graham, Sam, and Kayla. But with your arrival, Alexander, I took the liberty of calling this the Collaborology Study Group, because it was essentially a bigger envelope for what, or container for what I was seeing here. And I did that without consulting any of you. So I just wanted to say these little individual acts are certainly available for conversation, certainly available for review. But in my mind, I'm seeing that that is a possibility, and I wanted to sort of bounce that off of each of you.
Can I mention something before we go into that? Because that's a new thing. I think important to address, but just a couple of things that were arising here. Graham was talking a little earlier about, how where he is now, it's maybe God, family, and that's about it. And then maybe community, and then the rest of the world after that. But And I don't know. I think in many, it's certainly that way here as well. I think it's very much a Latin holding of things. And I was thinking in the US, it's more like me, then maybe family, and then, well, maybe not family actually. You know what? Me, and let's see, my dogs, my cats, I don't know, something else, and then that's family. I don't. It's different holding perhaps, but I think this question of this strident individualism, the notions of self, how that relates to collective. I think these are absolutely critical. How does it relate to, and what does it mean to human? Well, okay, that's one thing, but how do we do this together? What is the power of collective intelligence in this? Because again, as the saying is, none of us is as smart as all of us. Yeah, well, okay, good. And how do we leverage that? Because we can also get into groupthink. Hi. Oh.
Hey, big guy.
Our hyper puppy jumped on him and he fell on the corner of the table.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
So anyways,
Gosh.
I was listening. I often have to multitask.
Of course. Well, I hope he's okay.
I've got a zoo here. I've got 2 dogs, 2 kids.
Yeah.
I have a turtle.
And who do you have in hand? What's his name?
This is Maxwell. He can't hear you because I'm on my
you
ear
got your
pods.
headphones in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope he's okay.
I did want to say something when you were saying human. How do we human? And I am actually not Polynesian. That's a part of what I call my culture. I grew up with a Polynesian family. This is the wolf dog, the cause of Maxwell's pain. And I've had the opportunity to really be immersed in the culture. And it's beautiful because on the outside, looking in, I've had the freedom of not being part of a certain portion of their culture, which as an American, it can be a little conflicting. Like, for instance, Samoans have what they call fa'alaves, and it's just putting money in a pot and distributing it to the family, which is good, but then it also kind of, just depending on your social status, it just, I don't know, it wouldn't work for me. But anyways, on to the good part of that. The community itself is so welcoming, and it's worked for me as a dancer, as a mom, as a young woman. I have given all of, I just give all the props to my Polynesian community, because they have taken care of me in so many ways. So that's another kind of piece of the puzzle, I feel like, because not too many people are familiar with the inner workings of the culture. And I feel like, there are parts of other people's cultures and communities that you can fit together and be human, as you say, Alexander. So that just popped up when you wrote that, when Sam was talking, Graham, and that's it.
I love the way this works.
Yeah, I'm having all sorts of.
I gotta say this.
Sorry, you're stuck for me, Sam. Now, are you?
What?
I'm hearing him in flow.
You first. Hang on.
I'm hearing him in flow.
Okay. Can I go? Is that possible? Okay. I'm hearing a way to frame this as, and Alexander, you alluded to this, that in the US, it's more like I, and in other places, it starts with family and all those. So there's these phrases that I've been hearing. Life affirming is a mental perspective, an outlook that one brings, okay? There's another one that's community affirming, Other people use God affirming. Other people use family affirming. What I'm curious about is each of those, taken to an extreme, is unhealthy. What I'm curious about is how do we become more balance affirming if we recognize all of these different things? Early on, I was, too yang, I was too type A, I was too ambitious, too macho, too, other people think of that anyway. So I actually overreacted way the other end before I realized that no, that the proper reaction to one extreme is not the other extreme. It's a balance, and it's a dynamic balance because you're never going to be static in that balance. It's a dynamic balance full of, instantaneous little trim tab corrections. And so that's what I was kind of thinking is how can we be more balance affirming rather than specific ones of these other seemingly good perspectives. I hate to do this also, but I was wondering if it makes sense to decide whether or not we want to do this again, because if we get close to the top of the hour, I'd be blocking the unblocking session.
Sam, I also have a Zoom account too. So if we'd ever wanted to use my Zoom account, we can.
Well, I'm actually going to propose to Doug that he host unblocking because I know he hosts Thursdays and Fridays already, and he shows up to unblocking. So I think that he would be able to do it. So I'm hoping that we keep this time and just be free to extend it if we choose to continue. At least 3 of us will probably choose to continue. I'm fervently hoping that Alexander chooses to join us at least one more time. And so that we could, I'm gonna have to twist your arm, I know, okay? Wait, I'm gonna send Kayla to twist your arm, okay? She'll
Yeah, I don't know, I think my family scared him. Oh, there you go.
Anyway, I hate to have the last word, but I really wanna give the opportunity for each of you to have the last word.
Well, it's an interesting. Can you hear me? Am I coming across?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm outside with the thing, but I'm very involved at the moment with many different projects, and one of the projects I'm involved in is the Seeds community, which is alternative currency. The guys behind it are Haifa. The guy who's running Haifa is the ex-CEO of Bitcoin. It's a very interesting idea. It could be very big. It could be not very big. But it's a community and it's emerging, and it's a lot of young people in it, a lot of people really wanting to help and make it work, and just seeing how it's total chaos is overwhelming because you're throwing in thousands of people into one thing, thousands of messages, sorry, maybe 700 to 1,000 people, and there's no one organizing it. So there's nobody saying we're organizing this. So you just jump in and say, I'd like to do that. And then there's some sort of people gather here and groups form. So really, I'm looking at this from a research perspective on how that plays out because, in terms of patterns of behavior, self-emerging systems, complexity, the length of time. So we might just talk as a 4 once. Next time it could be 3, next time it's 2, next time it's 5. It's all that sense of, if you never know what's happening and the purpose isn't clear, you've not got agreements, and someone comes in, you explain agreements, it becomes really, really complex very quickly. And it's how to, for me, I think when Alexander at the beginning, how we connect quickly, right? Here I am, this is happening to me now, these are my needs now, this is what I'm doing now, and I'm looking for this. I've got my needs met today. I'm still curious. There's all sorts of things around the edges that I'm into, like what is a human being? That's an enormous subject. Without that conversation, I don't know how to become one. I don't know what a community is according to each the 4 of us. For me, culture destroys individuality. It's like, not always, but I'm saying, so I have so many different views about these words, and we enter into these things, but the core for me is a good feeling. That for me, as long as there's a warmth of the heart, and there's curiosity, and a sense of respect, then I think there's a sort of, where as some communities are talking about coherence and resonance. These are words I hear all the time. And someone said, this is the age of frequencies, when we start to align and find each other and go, this resonates with me, that doesn't, I don't know what it is. There's something not right here. So already Sam and Alexander have a resonance from 7 years of relationship. There's that as a pattern that's present. Sam and I know each other a bit. I don't know Kayla much. And so there's already a different pattern now that Alexander's here and present. And if we bring in somebody else, so it's really interesting how that evolves. But I have a meta belief that whoever turns up, like the open space protocol, this is meant to be, and we just allow it and explore. Wow, okay, what's coming next? Yeah.
Kayla, do you want to go?
You guys froze for a second. Are we checking out? Or
back to the unblocking group, I would like to make sure I can start that on time.
okay, yeah. I'm just happy to be here. I don't know what to say. I'm a pretty simple person. I'll talk more once I know everybody. But I love hearing and listening, and I'd love to get to know you better, Alexander, and then Graham. I think you and I have already started a conversation, and then of course Sam, I'll be visiting you.
Okay, so in 1 minute, really quick, because I know you got to go right now, Sam. So just to say, I think the notion of self is really a lot of what we're talking about here. But both individual and collective self, what is a collective self? There's a wonderful book called The Whole Creature by Wendy Wheeler. And she talks about, the collective self that emerges as an entity in its own being, in its own right, with its own characteristics. What is that? And Charles Eisenstein talks about interbeing. So of course that's Thich Nhat Hanh, right? Or before him talked about interbeing. What is the interbeing? And then there's the notions of Ubuntu that come from the Xhosa and the Zulu in South Africa. How are these related? Because they're very different from strident individualism. So I think these are key aspects of collective intelligence. Fascinated? And Sam, it's time for you to go check the other group.
So I really like this. I really love this particular conversation and how it's starting. And I'm really looking forward to next week. I definitely will offer to, request that Doug take on blocking, so we have less restriction next time.
And again, my Zoom is yours too. So it's the paid one.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be a problem. I know Doug has one.
Okay.
Mahalo.
Dosha, which is Taiwanese for thank you. Okay. Hey, I love you all. We'll talk next week. Bye for now.
Be well.